By the time you finish this sentence, 3 people somewhere on the planet will be dead. Only a sliver of those murders are carried out by the rarest, most methodical hunters of humans, serial killers. Here's the part that keeps profilers awake at night. The reason they kill, the way they pick you, and the certainty they'll do it again is usually locked in place before they turn 10. We like to picture serial killers as criminal masterminds, cloak-and-dagger geniuses. The reality? Most are just broken kids who never fixed what snapped early on. Tonight, we're opening 2 doors most people never walk through. First, the living rooms and bedrooms where the fuse got lit. Then, we'll fast forward to the crime scene itself and watch the predator's mind flip into gear. Calm, focused, already planning the next hunt. No jump scares, no ghost stories, just the patterns that show up again and again, from Milwaukee to Moscow. Let's start with a number, 68%. That's the conservative estimate of serial killers who were beaten, raped, or both as kids. When Radford University combed through almost 4,800 North American cases, most killers came from homes soaked in violence, booze, or plain neglect. Think of Jeffrey Dahmer. We all know the teen dissolving pets in acid. Less famous is the 7-year-old cowering under the bed while mom and dad screamed about divorce. Loud voices meant danger, disappearing meant safety. 15 years later, he was still making problems disappear. Only now the drum was filled with hydrochloric acid and human souvenirs. But abuse isn't the whole recipe. The second ingredient is a mirror that never forms. When caregivers flake or vanish, the kid's brain wiring for trust, empathy, and guilt never finishes. What's left is a vacant lot where conscience was supposed to go. Bullying adds the cherry on top. Ed Kemper, 6'9", 300 pounds, was the family runt at 10, locked in the basement while neighborhood kids spat on him. He told prison shrinks he daydreamed about cutting those kids into manageable pieces. That wasn't random. It was rehearsal. And puberty floods the brain with dopamine and testosterone while the brakes in the prefrontal cortex are still under warranty. In a healthy house, the teen years are a roller coaster. In a violent one, they're a lit match in a fireworks factory. Old question: bad genes or bad parents? Modern genetics calls that a false choice. You need both the loaded gun and the finger pulling the trigger. The suspect gene is MAOAL, the so-called warrior gene. It slows serotonin cleanup and greases the skids for aggression. But the gene alone won't turn you into a strangler. It just lowers your emotional shock absorbers. Add weekly beatings, emotional starvation, and friends who high-five cruelty, and you've got a biochemical perfect storm. Ixure software. The gene is buggy code. Trauma is the virus that exploits the glitch. Without both, the program limps along. With both, it blue screens spectacularly. Most serial killers tick the boxes for antisocial personality disorder, what your uncle at Thanksgiving calls psychopathy. The list is famous: smooth talker, inflated ego, lies like he breathes, no guilt, the twist that surprises people. Many are control freaks with color-coded closets. Organized offenders often score high on obsessive-compulsive traits. Dennis Rader, BTK, kept binders of news clippings, a stalking calendar, and still made it to Cub Scout meetings on time. Disorganized offenders, on the other hand, often drag around schizophrenia or bipolar disorder and leave crime scenes that look like a tornado took up knife throwing. Same childhood deficits, different ways the brain copes with chaos. Let's walk onto the killing floor. The FBI's behavioral unit splits serial homicide into 2 tracks. Organized. IQ average to high. Can hold down jobs, may have a spouse and a PTA badge. Brings rope, knives, duct tape. Crime scene looks like a logistics exercise. Victim is chosen, hunted, and usually a stranger who fits a private fantasy. Disorganized. IQ south of the bell curve, often unemployed. Socially awkward. History of psychotic breaks. Weapon of opportunity. Whatever's lying around, A rock, a frying pan, bare hands. Body left in plain sight, sometimes posed for shock. Here's the kicker. Very few killers stay in one lane. Ted Bundy looked buttoned up, law student, suicide hotline volunteer, but his last spree in Florida was a sloppy blitz inside a sorority house. Stressors like meth or a collapsing love life can shove the organized killer into disorganized chaos. This is where it gets nasty. Most of us have a violent thought, and our brain slams on the brakes. Serial killers hit the gas. The fantasy is a pacifier for a hole that never fills. Each kill is a short-term fix. The relief fades, so the fantasy levels up. Tighter restraints, longer screams, younger targets. Whatever one-ups the last high. Same neural loop as drug addiction. Craving, binge, crash, craving. Only the drug is another human's terror. Forensic profilers split MO, how you get away with it, from signature, why you needed to do it that way. MO evolves, signature matures. Dahmer didn't just kill. He posed bodies and snapped Polaroids because he wanted company that couldn't walk out. Rader mailed taunting letters, reliving the murders through the cops' panic. These aren't ego trips, they're rituals that close the fantasy loop. The signature usually grows bolder. Shorter cooldowns, riskier prey, flashier trophies, until the killer trips over his own ego. If this is hitting different from the usual true crime fluff, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Next episode, we're dissecting interrogations that cracked these killers wide open. The one question that made them blink, and the lie they couldn't stop telling. Let's stitch it together with 3 lightning-fast portraits. Eileen Warnos, dumped by mom, pregnant at 14 after assault by a family friend, living in the Michigan woods, swapping sex for cheeseburgers. The rage wasn't sudden. It was decades of dry kindling waiting for one abusive John to strike a match. Israel Keyes, raised in a white supremacist compound, homeschooled, no friends, isolation preached as holiness. As an adult, he buried kill kits across the lower 48 like squirrel caches, each a promise he could murder on demand and geography couldn't catch him. Richard Ramirez, belted by dad, brain marinated in chemical fumes while working for his Green Beret brother-in-law, shown Polaroids of Vietnamese torture at 12. By 25, he turned those images into the Night Stalker rampage. Certain Satan greenlit every slash. Different childhoods, identical arc. Trauma, broken attachment, fantasy loop, signature spiral. Cold truth, most battered kids don't grow up to strangle strangers. But the earliest red flags are often missed because they look like regular childhood problems. Bedwetting past age 10, fire setting, animal cruelty. The old MacDonald triad is shaky, but clusters of callous, unemotional traits plus severe early abuse should trip alarms. School counselors and pediatricians are the first responders. When a kid shows both animal cruelty and eerie remorselessness, intervention, not just detention, is the play. Early CBT, family attachment work, and sometimes low-dose impulse control meds have steered high-risk kids away from adult violence. It's easy to vanish down the monster's rabbit hole and forget the human cost. Every data point is a life gone, a family Christmas that now has an empty chair. Survivors talk about a permanent background hum of fear. Every footstep behind them, every stranger's smile feels like a loaded question. Remembering the victims means more than candles and hashtags. It means funding cold case units, clearing DNA backlogs, and refusing to hand the killer the fame he rehearsed for. If this episode rewired how you read the headlines, share it with the friend who still thinks serial killers are just born evil. Drop a comment. What detail won't leave your head? And if you want next week's deep dive on how profilers predict the next kill before it happens, subscribe and turn on notifications. We drop new episodes every Thursday. We started with a question. What if the worst acts don't come from twisted genius, but from a plain, broken circuit in the human brain? The answer's messy. The circuit is snapped, yes, but the hands that snapped it were human. Parents, neighbors, teachers, whole systems let these kids fall through the cracks long before they became predators. That's not a pardon, it's a map. Every insight into their wiring is another tool for investigators, another warning for parents, another shot at breaking the cycle before another child vanishes. The abyss is real. So is the rope that pulls us back. Research, vigilance, empathy. Keep hold of it. And the next time a new name flashes across the news, remember the story didn't start in a dark alley. It started years earlier, in a bedroom with the lights off and no one answering the cries. If this episode rewired how you read the headlines, share it with the friend who still thinks serial killers are just born evil. Drop a comment. What detail won't leave your head? And if you want next week's deep dive on how profilers predict the next kill before it happens, subscribe and turn on notifications.